I'm totally below you. Sir? How are you, sir? All right. Oh, yeah. Too early.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure.
7:30. Usually 7:30.
6:30. All right, good evening. So we'll start with short mandala offering, and then Geshe will lead the way with the recitation of Refuge and Bodhichitta as a way of correcting our motivation. So first thing first. Oh, I'm stealing your job. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're just introducing me.
Yeah.
You're just leading up to the big
Yeah, so I'm handing over now to the most amazing Umte ever invented. Yeah. If I had a hat, I would have taken my hat. Yeah.
So opening our hearts with gratitude and humility, we offer to all teachers. Saji Bhogi Jungshi Mendo Tranji Rablingshi Nideye Bhakti Sangye Shindu Niteowa Idro Kunanda Shiva Chupashu Guru Ratna Mandala Kamiyatami Sangye Chana Tsultrim Chanamba Chanchu Padu Dhammi Gyatsinchi Gabi Chishi Gibetana Dola Penche Sangye Druparasho Sangye Chana Tsultrim Chanamba Chanchu Padu Dhammi Gyatsinchi Gabi Chishi Gibetana Dola Penche Sangye Druparasho Sangye Chonan Tsokri Chanamba Chanchu Padu Dhammi Gyatsinchi Gabi Chishi Gibetana Sonamji Dola Penche Sangye Druparasho Kangi tulzengi zonye tawa tamche pambiche tambiche nutenze kwadam kela changze lo. Good evening, everyone. Kachis.
Tadi me gorichi ledwa time do
Dos.
kansamal.
Kondros ma.
Oh, cancer.
대다 더 가진 건저 대지단 산지 추조만 돈마지 쉬고라서 대지다 가진 건저 수중 걸려야 안 쪼데 메기치고 수중 jimba tsutum shikta tsutum di nolaya angan su megi chubung tsutum chik shui bas rakazi.
In this set of teaching, Geshe is expanding in details the verse for going for refuge and developing bodhicitta. So we spoke of going for refuge, and currently we're looking at not only bodhicitta, but also the practice of the 6 perfections. As it says in the last 2 lines in that verse, by the accumulations I gathered through generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all. In the previous session, Geshe spoke of ethics, and particularly the ethical discipline that abstains from the 10 non-virtues. And this is what we looked at in the previous session, right?
Terediza tadi labasum shewundi ra sanji chu nyamnin che tolaya shewundi labasum nam duguras labasum gnangi ta chik shima di nanzu tsigden damas na shima di an sudum gilabati di chagores ra.
So as we take up the practice of the Dharma, we practice the 3 trainings. The foundation for the practice of the 3 trainings is the training in ethics.
There's that di sudum gilaba di shire se di ta pomu yeme kyasel yeme kanji nanchu nyamsu lengingi yonsu zobagi Himalaya kigwa chik nenga chik chagor wasro.
Ethics is the very foundation for our practice, and as such, regardless of your gender, regardless of whether you're monastic or lay person, for whatever we practice in the Dhamma in its entirety, the very foundation for that is ethical discipline.
Tinza tinza mazuta chik rabjon pomu tsamalogi ta tsutum nalolata nama mambujari kachi ta rabjon tsutum slaundi ta kimbege song ta gomarda lago marde ya chik negap ani son tu maybe nesu chagor wasra ta di mai bi pena megichibung tsutum rojina nan samalogi ta di yabuji mewaina and di gana ya kombagyam do sedi yonya megirosik redos rachda shimai slavzarada.
And as ethical discipline constitutes the very foundation of a practice, we have, for example, ethics of monastics, male and female monastics, and there are quite a few details in that ethical discipline. Now, as for the laity, although it's hard to say that whatever monks and nuns take up in their practice of ethical discipline is not something that the laity need to practice. Still, so you cannot say that this is not something that in general people need to practice. Still, you can say that for the time being, you can decide that it is not within your ability to do it now. So something that is common to all practitioners, monastics and lay practitioners alike, is the guarding of ethical discipline that abstains from the 10 non-virtues. So this is the very basis. This is the very foundation of our practice, both for monastics and lay practitioners. So this is something that all of us have to take up.
Terda tinzada luki len number sum ngaki number shi yigi number sumgi chuti dichagdas da dinganzu yakuchi 지단 내라고 그랬다. 시야를 내라고 그랬었어. 이내야 딜락내는 가수 스타트도 도문도 딩한지 sometimes.
So then within the ethics of abstaining from the 10 non-virtues, we have 3 of body, 4 of speech, and 3 of mind. And such, it's quite easy not only to enumerate them, but also to discuss them. Though it is easier to speak of the 10 non-virtues in terms of our practice, this is something that we need to assess for ourselves. How easy or how hard is it for us to put into practice ethics that abstains from the 10 non-virtues?
Tedizada Lug number some day, Pigita, Solchava, Machimba Nemba, that Mazancho, that Lovaimba, or Dintich, some dita, so Shagoristan, Migichu, so down dira.
As for the three non-virtues of body, which means physical non-virtue, we have killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. These are the three, right?
Dirida, Dichidi, that Sochava said the Jadangi so Kandajik Sochava in ya. Diva Mikivaras, Diva Mikivaras, the United Dinamo, Kaukola, Shujachi, Kaukosama, the Chick Pig, Sawa Shilla Pajamdi, Sochava and it me Sochavalaya, Jariores. The Migichu Sochava me Sochavala Jargu Yoda, Chitangi Sochavala Jargu Yoda, the one Chitang Sochavalaya, Jargu Nindo Childos.
Of the three physical non-virtues, the first one is killing. Whatever we kill, it is regarded as a negativity or non-virtue. Now, killing can also be explained in a more specific way in relation to what is called the four roots. And as part of the four roots, the act of killing refers to killing a human being, which means that the discussion of killing can be contextual. For those who guard against what is called the four roots, the act of killing is regarded as killing another human being. But then also there is a general killing, which is the killing of any living being. So then Geshe feels that the interpretation of killing in general, particularly in this context, should not be applied only to human being, but it should also be to other life forms, killing any living being.
The Sochu Dombi, Sudram Chayalaya, Pena Sochu Dombi, Sudram Delaya, Ni Doj Checho was a res, Pish Checho was a da, Kazana, and a Chinan Tumuigi, Sochu Dombi, Sudram Chigdown, and then Nambi Tumumaimbi, Sochu Dombi, Sudram Lana, Lapchoresra.
So then when you think of killing, and particularly the ethics that abstains from killing, you can say, roughly speaking, that there are two types of abstention from killing. There is an abstention from killing that is common to Buddhists and non-Buddhists. And there is also an abstention from killing that is specific to non-Buddhists, in a sense that you can say that this is a particular unique assertion that is asserted in the Buddhist tradition.
Terda, Tachatangi Chinan Tomovi Sojo de Bisurand, Sojo Domia Rangamata, Teleaji, D any lady, Lem Megivala Zini, T U, and a Chadamosung Konelani, Tachi Migi on Radang, Tinji, Shilsabu, Samodi, Goya Samaris, Ra, and Dichi, Dichi Goya Samaris, the Chinan Tomovi Sojo de Bisurandela.
So that when you consider ethics that abstains from killing, which is common to both Buddhists and non-Buddhists, you can say that it could be referred to the killing of any living being and abstaining from killing any living being, which means that as it is common to both, that abstention is common to both Buddhists and non-Buddhists, Buddhists and non-Buddhists, you'll not be thinking deeply or making a lot of distinctions as for the way that you involve in that action of killing, which means that rather than taking the action of killing as being motivated by anger, attachment, and ignorance, and thereby creating a negative action, accumulating in a negative action that results in suffering, you wouldn't take that to be the rationale behind abstaining from killing. Right? So you would not be thinking deeper or in great details in terms of karma, non-virtues, and so forth. So that consideration of abstention from killing would be common to both Buddhists and non-Buddhists.
Tere dizata nambi sojo dambi chutums lawandi da zo de nambi chutum di ngenjong chutums lawandi ani ngeban jondo ge sambachi ngenjong sambe sambachi da chemo mayimba sedi kawur de ya kanji chemo chunjo ge simbachi goguyores ra.
So then as for the one that you would be approaching from a Buddhist perspective, that would be abstaining from killing, that is part of developing ethics of restraining from wrongdoings. So you can develop that attitude of abstention from wrongdoing to the point in which it becomes uncontrived. But even if you haven't got to the point in which your attitude of abstention is uncontrived, you begin with contriving a sense of abstention that abstains from wrongdoings.
The sok chegugi pi cheji sok dengi kanzaki and capture or shiondi and nambe and sok de yongaya and kabameba ro kandachi sok chevaina dibo megyo imbachi sungyoresta and chulu shengi the kazusachi capture chitamaloya kazus drogime and machines.
Now, from a Buddhist perspective, when you consider how pervasive the consideration of killing is, from a Buddhist perspective, we regard killing as killing any living being. Right? So it is considered in a very pervasive way, human and non-human alike. Whereas in other traditions, Geshe is not sure whether it is interpreted in that extensive way.
Kazana chulu kashi manchu pigoras ra manchu pidige pige tundro simjin kaptu laya childroni ani chi ta chi choden da kundala sobota ani chi shindon la sobet ni chile droni kaptu korato ya pyati chobal zigoras di digbal zigio maros.
In saying that Geshe said that in saying that he's not sure how pervasive it is in other traditions, it is to say that there are some religions, some spiritual traditions that involve practices of sacrificing animals. So you would lead an animal to either a stupa, a statue, or at the foot of a tree, and you would sacrifice that animal at that location, which means that animal sacrifice is not considered to be a negativity, it is considered to be a religious practice. Virtue. Now here we're not acting in order to condemn other traditions. So whether or not we take the position that this is bad or we don't take the position that this is bad, what we begin with is with the recognition that all sentient beings are equal in terms of wanting to be happy and wanting to avoid suffering.
Kanji and Samolaya, Devan Deva, the Dungamandeva, Chigurgi, so Yobaina, Suga Dungajabaina, Maramachik, Kungun is Chagoras, Dimbaina, and then Dimadas Ra.
And since all living beings have the same basic wish to be happy and not to suffer, in no way it is appropriate to harm others.
Yeah, Chulu Kaji, nothing Kunyumi, that of Janyo the Medina, and Socha Kaji, and Chikunjoki, Nanzulaya, and Saya Nangsha says Dindi, and Shesu yourself, and you can Kizit in the Imbina, Yan Dig, and Socha Batelia, Peshet Dibatsi Yimaras.
Now, Geshe said that he hasn't done study or comparative study of other religions, but still he heard other people describing some practices or beliefs involved with other religions. So whatever he has to say about it is just based on conversations that he had with others rather than having done research himself. But then still what he had from others is that there are traditions, for example, or religions that believe that some living beings were created by God in order to feed human beings, which means that God gave some animals to us in order to act as a way of, in order to feed us. So if you have that belief, then killing that animal does not constitute a negativity from your point of view, right?
Teza da dimjiki keba mambu yungu yonza, da chik ani penna lugi megewa sumdi sung goya gyunsi jikshe me bayna. Ani da digmadas ra. Da sung goya gyunsen shiawan digi penna soche murong ya gyunsen di karesena ani shenla ya nusi chigdos. Sokden shenla ya nusi chiwa di digmados. Kaisena sosula ya nusi china digmado anganzo ani chigbares. O dimji gyunsen jigi yabayna ani semna lodewura yungudas ra.
So then if you have such a view, such a belief, then you wouldn't consider the killing of an animal as something that is negative. Now, from a Buddhist perspective, all action of killing any living beings are considered to be negative actions. That being the case, it's not enough to just take it as an assumption or a statement. We also need to think of a reason why such an action is regarded as negativity, as a negative action. So a rationale for that would be that killing another living being is a harmful action because it is harming others. Sorry, it is a negativity because it is a harmful action. Because living beings do not want to suffer, right? So we have the equal wish to be happy and not to suffer, and therefore it is not right to harm others.
Tereda 점든디게 gomba tartubati 비게 미기 주봉 수름 동거야 디난게 직 류기 미기비 수름 동거야 디 대한 속제바 동거야 디 안사노 찌기린자 아니 잔된 지고야 겐젠 디톤 tartugonde 디톤 정도스 이내야 직 남변왕로야 직 아니 대바 최종이 개발시 온디 대바 멤버 속에 소디 아니 신기 소제바이나 디나밍기 동아 랑기 뇽고그레스 딘자 지금도세니 양 수dom동고비 견세직 송고요레스 라디 아니 랑라야 랑진징기스 아니 samlu on tindrawchik drongezo chagdasra da ani chanyamgi chanding samlo shenjinjing samlo di ani tebochimbugi samlo di sanjamden di gomban tadwa imadi siures ra.
And when this reason is used in order to abstain from killing, in taking into consideration the equal wish for all living beings to be happy or well and to avoid suffering, it becomes an honest and truthful reason for abstaining from killing. So this is the type of attitude that you generally take in the Buddhist tradition. And still, when you look at different Buddhist traditions, you can make some distinctions as for the motivations that are involved with the abstention from killing. Like, for example, you can say that from the viewpoint of the Hinayana tradition within the Buddhist tradition, one consideration is that the action of killing is a negative action, the fruition of which is suffering. And since we want to avoid suffering, we ought to avoid that action, which means that the avoidance from killing would also be involved with some degree of cherishing ourselves. Whereas from a Mahayana perspective, the avoidance of killing would be involved with, not with a sense of concern for ourselves, but more on the basis of recognizing the equality between ourselves and others.
This tang anzu gi mangche tang anzu number chigi Islam teba chimbu chuchi ra anzu chanju sim dombale yale gawiyore ani sangala chuchi la gawiyanza anzu gi gewa khanche badi teba chimbu gi chula ya rotu ya chi an chego rasta ra tinza an di kolon zo di ani shenjin jing samlot dan ninji da chanju sem chuma mai bayona da Yashur teda menaya chik dranyam imbachik ani khan cheba di tanden chig tolaya drogore sambigi samlo ji yobayna an teba chimbu samlo na ya chuya ge rewachi ado asro timado an divasana ngani wala drogore ngaran dungan yongore pesa sai samlo di ani di teba chimbu nyamna drogmu dasra.
So then for us as practitioners, when we think of how do we then take up this attitude of abstention, well, taking into consideration particularly our sense of affinity with the Bodhisattva vow or the mantra vow, the Bodhisattva practices, the mantra practices, we want to make sure that whatever virtue we create, that virtue becomes a Mahayana virtue, that it contributes to our practice of the Mahayana. So whatever virtue we undertake, we want to make sure that it is combined with an attitude of cherishing others, that is based on compassion and bodhicitta. And if we have developed uncontrived compassion and bodhicitta, of course, that's best. But if we haven't got to that point, at least we can do that on the basis of recognizing the equality between ourselves and others. And if we do that, that would be an honest and genuine approach to our practice.
Tereda deni majemba lembati da tsamalo kanji majemba lemba yana ani shengi lonjol neba ani shenla neba o dindi charo dasra.
Now the second non-virtue is taking what was not given to you, otherwise it's called stealing, which is something that is harmful to the possessions of others. It is harmful to others.
Tinza da rangla nena mandiwa nanshingi mendiwa nanshingi shenla nena ya mandiwa ji imbata jigbarasra.
Just like it is not right for oneself to be harmed, we dislike harm that is visited upon oneself. Similarly, when others face harm and injury and so forth, they find it displeasing, and therefore that should be avoided. Now the next one is called sexual misconduct. Now in Tibetan language, it has a variety of ways of referring to that form of behavior. You can call it sexual misconduct, or you can also call it behavior that is impure. If you want to take it with a more kind of vast or broad interpretation, you can regard those type of activities as sexual misconduct rather than calling them impure behaviors, right? So sexual misconduct would be more fitting if you want to look at that in a more broader sense.
Telda the dig gaja kariores and carnivores lana taben on tong deati bena chiso no ya chi any trupomam sure deati loyum tony trugim pe mom shorgoras tara bena on tong tesaya chik sazam parala zoya sobota shengi pigilaya dato son deni telaya chik any chela sobo to zutsamo and bedi trugim zoji chagoras tadi.
And the rationale behind avoiding sexual misconduct is that we can see in our human society how many troubles and conflicts we have based on sexual misconduct, how destructive it is. Things like, for example, coming in between couples, having relationships with people that are already in another recognized relationship. We can see, based upon a personal experience, how destructive it is in human society.
The dindila tu on the bed the any chick piglia zingring chia dan chick any seri chia di bed medus tezameva chick chado dos ra dindi that yoda sauredos there are.
And we can see how that creates so many problems between people, fighting with others, killing others, and so forth, originating from such actions of misconduct. That's quite clear.
Dirita Nibalaya Kariungusla, that's all the and Semlaya Chagdan Mangroyachik. Ra, the Gasha zu di Sokjabatian, Mang Chichuji, and Chabiwanki Sokjegoras, Majimalandian, Chabiwanki, Majimalangoras, and Loyum Sena, Mazanjadian, so Chabiwanki Jonza, and Chasam Shukcher Drechik. Chagdan Chasam Shukcher Drechik. Chagoras, ra.
So one reason that we used so far was emphasizing how it is harmful to other living beings. But then a second reason for avoiding those actions is in recognizing how they're involved with attachment. Because of attachment, we kill others. Because of attachment, we take what was not given to us. Because of attachment, we get involved with sexual misconduct. So on account of something that is motivated by attachment, and the more we engage with those actions, the more our afflictions increase and proliferate, then those actions are to be avoided.
That Chasam Shukchildren, the Pian Kariuslandi, and Down Shukchildren does, and Tubo Mangal does. And as the Valia Mundumanda, Yagado, that Pedo and the Tajik, Tundrusum Gentuzolia, Devana, but the Siv Shuch. Kunzo Pigilayachi, two Switchik Kichani, Kunzo Chabalaya, Tuzotelia, and Trupa Shoot Yang Hasra.
And it is also quite clear that when that sense of attachment and desire arises in human beings' mind, we tend to be more argumentative or to find more conflicts, to raise more conflicts between one another. Maybe it's not that visible in this society, it's more visible in other places like India, or at least when you look at India or Tibet and you look at wildlife, here it seems that we live sometimes in an environment that is somewhat more removed from wildlife, but at least when you look at that in India or Tibet, you sometimes come to the mating season and you see how animals have those major conflicts and major fights which are associated with that sense of attachment or desire.
That those some that they love ye Mahura, love ye dodge. Pena Kidan, any and Tundrutuzlaya, Tutsodochik. Those Nanzumilaya Tutsikil make it. Teach you the Nanzumidi calculate, kill Dodoch.
Actually, when you look at animal behavior, you can learn something about yourself in the sense that you can sometimes get another perspective. It's like when you look at dogs, for example, they have mating seasons, right? So it's not that they go for it whenever. It's normally during the mating season. But for us, there's no mating season, is there? No, the more the better sometimes.
Or did it was then can just sound down the Genji Madobing. Any then the Kevinchik Zao in the Mavach, raw, and Trupashaya, Sam Tuya, and Chabankin, that D and Namelaya, Dungam Bashing Mato, and a Shide Yongyatan, Monigi and Deva Yongyati, Messiwaredos, raw. The dealer sound Dani, and on the Megichuti, Bemas Kitchen.
So thinking of these points is helpful in terms of recognizing how when a mind is governed by attachment, by the sense of desire, we face some disturbances. We tend then to find more conflicts with our interactions with others. And the ripening result of that is more suffering. A mind cannot find peace. We cannot remain with a mind that is more at ease, more comfortable. So it's good to think about it. It's good to recognize such drawbacks of those actions and also the states of mind that are involved with them.
That the Namguni should extra Kadu Kogorana and Chikichu singing deep, Pena, and Lugi was soon deep, Chu Chon Sound Dana, and Kitchen Shushik, Chitangi, Migi, Yarabki, Kunjola Sound Damania, Shizazochi, and Gakok Tim the Sound Damania, Chu Menaya, Pig. Yakub Sendenji Tuna Sandawane, could Timgage Chadi. Dinza that number Tamjini Torgoya Ra Inza Ani Sanjam Negi Dom Jam Sonshaki Ra. But the least child was Ra.
Those actions can be viewed from different perspectives. You can view them from a Dharma perspective, but also you can look at them just from a general point of view. If you want to become a good human being, those actions are to be avoided. But also if you live in a place where you have a good and solid legal system, such actions would also be regarded by and large as illegal actions. So when you think of such non-virtues, in all ways, you come to see how these actions are something that we need to avoid. We need to rid ourselves of these actions. So it's a good way to look at those 10 non-virtues, to look at them from different perspectives and recognize how naturally these are non-virtuous actions.
The deep chick song drinking meeting by now, and mid the su tong by now. Sudachilla Tubainaya, and Gawaki Guach, Meganjian Kandajimbaya, and these Chim the son Jongin D, and Monsieur Tenaya, and Yabu Twachik, the Chagdos Ra.
If you're a person that has a good measure of avoidance of those actions, Geshe reckons that regardless of your age, you might be young, you might be old, regardless of who you are, you will be appreciated in society. Others will have a good and solid impression of you if you naturally come to avoid those non-virtues.
That treasure Tsultrim gain the gains and the Ganja Damaros, Randanchem Shugi, and it said that big Doja Panana so the Ganja Damaros. That the gain Rick Nangi, gain chot Kivadi, and it Sutrum gain race. Sutrum gain the gain chot Kivadlia, and it wins in Ra.
So we're getting a little bit off the topic, but anyway, since we are talking about it, let's continue. So ethics is regarded to be the best ornament. So we wear different ornaments, so jewelry. Might be gold, diamonds, or what have you. Ethical discipline is considered to be the best or the most supreme ornament.
Then the gain Shemba Rigdi, Katsusi Pigler and Tanchimbu in by now, the Michanzanaya, Lembu Yobi, Nibatsa in Mendas, gain Kashi, and it's Lo Shembagi, Genja the Tana, there's Ninja Woodrich, Gengo Chawandi, Lembu Major. Yankashi, Miguel Lembu Yodeva, and Rabjon Pumulaya, Lembu Medeva. Kanji Dindi Ro Chanyam Jik Zawini Yomaras. That Tsultrim we gain the Sula Yobainaya. Samalogi, Yipisha Desag, Yanch Chagwanza, Yancho Jore Sadi, Muyeredindos.
Ornaments, jewelry do not work in the same way for everyone, in a sense that it's not that they will suit everyone. There could be some jewelry that are really suited for a young person, but not for the old. There could be something that works well for a layperson, but it's not suited for a monastic. But with ethical discipline, it doesn't work like that. Ethical discipline is an ornament that is suited for everyone.
Tirda the dini ngagi number she said zoom chama tsuk ngakil said diris taro.
And that everyone will find the ornament of ethical discipline to be impressive or inspiring. Anyway, then we have the 4 verbal non-virtues. They are lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter.
Tirda that is nanzuchiong gita and dinang pena zoom shebaina kapsu la ya jigden yon rak ki nanzu kevin se deati this that yon sigo giras di ko marabras ko marab number di gyub ni matangajil teni yongras ra madota ani shembatel ya leg bichajik mundos ani zoom sheding midi ani mid sundajigi na ya cha shagmaros ro ani susu nami na ya cha shagmari thomba kimji na ya cha shagmari lomba phenzu na cha shagmari yakab de yakab para in baina zoom sheding di ani chikpi sinzin cha baina ya ko maviri khatang dos ro.
So of the 4 non-virtues of speech, the first one is lying. And first off, we can say that there could be some profit that you get from lying. But still, when you look at the action of lying from different perspectives, you can see how although there is some profit that you might get from that, in essence, it's still considered to be a negative action. It is involved with dishonesty. This is you can say the cause for lying is a dishonest attitude. So then when we look at how lying works and the problems with lying, you can see how it is not compatible with any relationship that you would have if you have a personal relationship with another person or relationship within your household, your neighborhood, your city, your town, and your place. Now, if you're a leader, a political leader, and you're involved with lying, deceiving others will criticize you.
That Tamasing so the made a mean paralia and Trushin getting it and a Torshik Droyagi, sick page chiadi, and it Tomba the Tomba para, Kimzan the Kimzan para, Chigara the Soba the Sobe paralia, and it Kejada the Sheche, True Tag, Kejadi, Tamachawaris raw.
Next is divisive speech, which can occur in different environments between, you can say, between people in your immediate locality, between different cities or different villages, between different countries and so forth, in the community that you live in the group that you belong to. A type of behavior that is divisive. Speaking of issues with the orientation of keeping them apart or creating a rift between them is what is called divisive speech, which is a negative action.
These are the Chiparos, the Gaza, the Chiparos reshas. That Dini and Tsultrim said the Milaya Chip and Podum Royak Six, so the Pashomi, Samgam Laya, New York, and Sick Pejuchedi, Six of this raw.
And the reason for avoiding that is the same as before. Now, the third of speech is harsh speech, which means that saying something that is offensive, that is hurtful to the other person. That's harsh speech.
That Nakel today, Nakel Dini, so Chick Demik Kejamon said that. Get a chukin major, chicken goats so on the shoot on the bar, Zamjam doing 된다면 이렇게 뭐 시에 대해디 나르킬데스라.
And the last one is idle talk, which means speaking about things that are meaningless. To the point where when you start having those conversations about meaningless things, you get sometimes to a point where it just can't stop. You can't put a stop to that conversation. That's idle chatter.
제 더디 하드지 간조 rabjon 포무 이바이나 나르킬데 쇼지 빵고야지 라 가즈나 간조 rab도 총 고든 쪼디 사블로미 체기 안 투송 공성 체라 투즈 딘디질이야 땅 투야 체도다 rab도 총 요라스 라.
That's particularly for monastics, if you think about it, in that when you take up ordination, you think that I'm doing that so that I'll be able to allocate my time more to study, reflection, and meditation. So then if you get involved with meaningless chatter for time on end, without end, you're not really fulfilling the purpose of becoming a monastic. So particularly for monks and nuns, this is a pertinent point.
지 카짱랑 쇼데요 요나 만네로 된다는 되기도 하스라 카인지미 구데고 요나 만네다 피 생각으로 산대셔나 즉서라스.
Now, so if you're in that situation where you're just kind of wishing to engage in, or you're about to engage in a conversation and you feel kind of compelled to say something, well, you can just say some mantras. Just recite Om Mani Padme Hum or another mantra. It'd be better than just kind of having a conversation for the sake of having a conversation.
가시 나도 깨지 켜는 베기 렌치 야무고 베디 추즈니 섬이야 시사라나 베 시에유주로지 and 디파 칼라바 데디 간즈 카슈 군이 좀 메르서서지
Going Kadia. I guess I said that some people are so in favor of talking that if you give them a way to start talking, right? If you open the door for them, they could speak for 2 hours without even giving you an opportunity to say something, right? So, you might ask a question and then you get a 2-hour long conversation, which is a one-sided conversation. And when you look at it, it seems that the person was just waiting for an opportunity for the mouth to move.
펜도베요라스 된다디 일을 차와이나 아니 이기 디톨에 상당히 고급이라서 디 아니 곰 소리지라더스라.
The point is that we want to create some space in order for meaningless words, speech to be able to appear to our mind. So if something meaningful is being said and you also have the space to think about it, to make the meaning arise in your mind, this is what we call meditation.
딘즈다 간지 아니 뒤쪽으로 땅에 소리디 괜히 지기메이서스 간지 먼저 최칭이 간사질이야 먼저 최지하게 뒤쪽 만담이 강하면도 먼저에 뒤쪽 배자야기 엔디 제단 자원인 못다스 뒤쪽 요거 쇼기야 나는 공다 니에 빠라네야 지게 제노 메교르지 저 상대야 땅와이나 기체로 메주르지 렌도스 베나 로디 사니 로디 체니 다 다와 주고 조조치거리 격고 쉬우지 조선스라.
And this is how we endeavor to spend our time in trying as much as possible to make the mind engage with things that are meaningful. So if we then take that as a priority or take that as a significant thing, something that is important, we might discover that we don't have enough time to make it happen. in that we wake up in the morning and we take up different things till it is evening, time for us to go to bed. And sometimes you discover that actually you don't have enough time to do all the meaningful things that you set out to do. When you think of, for example, when you think of the passage of time, for example, in terms of this year, it is now October, and the time from the beginning of the year has passed so quickly. And when you recognize this swift passage of time, you can also then recognize how our time is running out. In this life, our time is running out, and sooner rather than later, death will be upon us. Human life exhausts in such a quick way, is exhausted in such a quick way. And we want to make sure that we do not die without making sure that we make the most out of this life, that we do not use the purpose of this life.
사리말 상상로지 간지 쇼게 당부 야란 추수 찍니질이야 그 가리는 야구를 제도다 아니 제라 되니 니마츠 샤원디 아니 카버다 강가츠 샤량이 되지 그래서 트랄라 드셔야
So then just sharing a little bit of his personal experience, Geshe said it might sounded a little bit pointless, but still, he wakes up daily at 3:30 at night, or 4:30 or 5. And when he wakes up, he has that urgency to get going. His state of mind is let's get going, let's be efficient. And of course, it's hard to be efficient for everything that happens to you throughout the day. But still, he has that intention to do it when he wakes up. And it is quite often like that. You come up with that spur of intention. And you think that I want to be efficient, I want to do it well, and you can keep doing it for an hour or so. And then you pick up your phone and things go into disarray. So you look at your phone and then things come up, and then this is where you start falling behind the plan that you had from the very outset.
쇼기 규제디 약식직 차고스 드니양 규제디 나오리야다 직나 가시디 믹스망이 장거라스다 믹스마 장원디 믹스마도 교보교보 장와이나 까마시사 나나라야 팅거직
까마시야
시 나든지 나오니 팅거직 사투지야 교보쇼 장샤디 단달라야 직 상로직 비길야 직 만콜교도지 양디야 직 추메지로지 양 칼리지 장원디 까마듀스 something like come choose to go by na and choose to chignal ya tingo trucks mother down to windows yan de tiwale you touch kanji tipara ya ni samna ya sangaru take this kanji tizud pen yora sorash tizud.
So then Geshe wakes up in the morning and then kind of he thinks that let's get going, let's make sure that the day is used in a beneficial way. So one of the things that Geshe does in the morning is the recitation of the Mixima verse involved with the Guru Yoga practice of Lama Tsongkhapa. So normally it takes about 4 or 5 minutes to do a whole round of the recitation of the verse. So then Geshe thinks that if he does it too quickly, right? So he can do it in less than 4 minutes. But if it is recited too quickly, you don't really get to think of the meaning of the words. And if you do it slowly, where you get the chance to maybe more to have a more leisurely reflection of the meaning of the words of Miksema, then it might take you 7 or 10 minutes to recite one mala, which means that in 1 hour, you might get only 6 malas done, which kind of Geshe says that it feels like you have wasted a little bit of time because you've done only 6 malas of Miksema. No, so in short, Geshe says that it seems that sometimes no matter how you do it, it feels that you haven't used your time skillfully. Which means that the message is that we need to have good time management and to be able to sort out our priorities, to really recognize what our priorities are. Because if we don't do that, there is a danger that we will waste our time in this life and the time will run out. Time will get exhausted in this life. And if we spend it on things like idle chatter and so forth, time will run out.
Dinza Nanzugi Geshe Nanzulaya Nibayores, Nanzu Geshe Yores, Dinza Kan Geshe Bati Gejet Tenda Dembajilea, Roku Yona, and Temegi Gejet Tigitilea, Zemson Chigoechik, Ra, and it or Dichagos Ra.
So we have the ability to speak. And if we want to use our ability to speak or to converse and we want it to be meaningful, what we need to avoid is idle chatter, in a sense that we want to avoid speaking of things that are not meaningful. So then when we think about it, we develop an attitude that is a little bit careful or apprehensive. In noticing that, for example, the sometimes when we meet with close friends and we start to have a conversation with them, we often end up with a conversation that is critical of others. So we have sometimes the tendency to speak at great length of the deficiencies of others. So this is not great in the great scheme of things. So this is something that we want to be careful of. Gyatso Rinpoche said in his commentary to the Ornament for Clear Realization in one of the verses that if you cannot rejoice in others, at least avoid criticizing them. But if you cannot rejoice in others, stop speaking badly about them.
And Sukra, Kyun Kodres, Kiyomaras. Tigi, Kyunju Chivati, Karl Newers, Rangaya, Rangi Kunjo Samboti, Lunga Kunjo Samboti, Nyambi Gichagoras, Tero, Kanji, Shanley, Kyunju Chivati, and Nabon Bashi Chesadi, Rani Chagores. Tenza, Samlaya, Ranjin Samlo the Shuji and Lunga Tone, and Rang Kyunjin Swedawaina, Shomandas Ra.
Now, if you criticize others, you speak of the faults of others, whatever you express does not become attached to them, in a sense that it's not that you defile others through criticizing them. But what you're doing is that you're making your own good behavior decline, deteriorate, which means that you undermine your own good conduct, which means that you yourself become at fault. And this is not something that is suitable for us, right? It's not right for us. It's not what we want to do. It's not that we want to be at fault.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let's leave it here for now. Let's do some dedication verses. Rinpoche make panan ke gyuruchi ke vanyampa me paya gone gondo pe washu Nyudu da lama sangye rugyu ne dowa chikyama lupa de sala gopashu Ravi kowe shinkansu pendan dewa malu jongwe ne chenre sewan tenzi gyatsoye shape site padu tengyuru shi Janshin jangun gyawe Tenzin yongpe we gongso to bonze Chosung ko we le mondu du Pa da so du je gondu shab den sho
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Can I integrate did I?
네.
네.
될. 다른 24시로 해라.
라.
킵해도 그래 왜지? 킵했어 그럼 킵. 움직이고 봐. 아 네.
맞아요.
킵도 와.
Nej.
오케이.
그냥 키.
킵.
Okay. Not pet to you.
오케이 그렇잖아.